Hello and a very warm welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching a brand new edition of World Panorama with me, Frank Pereira. Over the next half an hour, we'll bring you a roundup of all the significant events that have happened around the world this week. But first, a look at the headlines. North Korea faces overwhelming US response if it uses nuclear arms. Donald Trump's defense secretary warns Pyongyang that any attack on the South will be defeated. Donald Trump fires acting US Attorney General Sally Yates, calls her action an act of betrayal after she refuses to enforce his immigration ban orders. Six killed after lone wolf gunman opens fire at Quebec City Mosque. Authorities charge Alexander Bissonnette, a French-Canadian university student, for multiple murders. And 3 days after putting him under house arrest, Pakistan puts Jamaat-ud-Dawa chief Hafiz Saeed and 37 activists on exit control list, bans them from leaving the country. Well, Donald Trump's defense secretary has warned North Korea it would face a strong response from America if it used nuclear weapons. Speaking in South Korea on Friday, James Mattis reassured the government in Seoul that the US would retaliate should its northern neighbor launch any attack. Here's a report.
US President Donald Trump's defense secretary warned North Korea on Friday of an effective and overwhelming response if Pyongyang chose to use nuclear weapons, as he reassured Seoul of steadfast US support at the end of a two-day visit.
Any attack on the United States or on our allies will be defeated, and any use of nuclear weapons would be met with a response that would be effective and overwhelming.
Mattis's remarks come amid concern that North Korea could be readying to test a new ballistic missile in what could be an early challenge for Trump's administration. North Korea, which regularly threatens to destroy South Korea and its main ally, the United States, conducted more than 20 missile tests last year, as well as 2 nuclear tests in defiance of UN resolutions and sanctions.
North Korea continues to launch missiles, develop its nuclear weapons program, and engage in threatening rhetoric and behavior.
North Korea's actions have prompted the United States and South Korea to respond by bolstering defenses, including the expected deployment of a US missile defense system known as the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense in South Korea last year. China, however, has objected to the deployment, saying it will destabilize the regional security balance, leading to calls from some South Korean opposition leaders to delay or cancel it.
We believe this move by United States and South Korea will harm strategic security interests of countries in the region, including China, and will harm strategic balance in this region. We do not believe this move will be conducted to resolving the Korean Peninsula nuclear issue or to maintaining peace and stability on the peninsula.
South Korean Defense Minister Han Min-koo reaffirmed plans for the deployment and said Mattis's visit to Seoul, his first trip abroad as Defense Secretary, sent a clear message of strong US support.
Secretary Mattis' visit to South Korea and meeting show our determined will to respond to North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. And this will be the strongest warning to North Korea.
Former US officials and other experts have said the United States essentially has 2 options when it comes to trying to curb North Korea's fast expanding nuclear and missile programs: negotiate or take military action. Neither path offers certain success, and the military option is fraught with huge dangers, especially for Japan and South Korea, US allies in close proximity to North Korea. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, joining me for a chat this week to talk about this is the foreign editor of the Hindustan Times, CHAUDHURI. Thank you so much for joining me on the program, PRAMIT. You know, as far as the Asian allies of the United States are concerned, after all the pre-poll rhetoric, can they now finally heave a sigh of relief?
Well, I think that's what Mattis's primary purpose of his present tour is, that the 5 main treaty allies of the United States in that region have been very concerned, especially after not only with Trump's statements about allies not doing enough to secure the region, but also his decision to abandon the Trans-Pacific Partnership, because the trade side of it and the military side were the two elements of America's ability to contain Chinese power in the region. By abandoning the trade side and then saying that on the military side, Trump basically said, I don't think you're doing enough, a lot of the allies in the region were unnerved. So Mattis's tour right now, in which he's going to visit at least several of these allies, if not all of them, is basically to try to reassure them that even with the TPP gone, America's position on the Western Pacific remains the same regarding China. And so South Korea, as I mentioned, is the first country. Japan will obviously be the next. The key question for me will be Taiwan. Will he visit or will he make a statement about Taiwan in one of these countries? Because that already Trump has indicated that he is prepared to reconsider the one China policy, which is in many ways a bedrock of the US-China relationship so far.
You know, interestingly, he's also spoken about the South China Sea, where James Mattis has said that there is no need for any dramatic military action in the South China Sea. Now, that too is an interesting development, isn't it? Yeah,
there I think Mattis had to go in the other direction, because already we've had Rex Tillerson, the U.S. Secretary of State, who's just been appointed, and the White House spokesperson, Sean Spicer, have both come out and said that a blockade of a Chinese military base, one of the islands that they've taken over and have militarized, one of these could be blockaded by U.S. military, by the U.S. Navy, and that they would consider that to be a reasonable action. That, I think, has also alarmed allies, because obviously that would mean a direct military confrontation with China at a point when China itself right now has actually done nothing. It's said almost nothing about the Trump administration at the official level. So I think Mattis again felt he needed to roll that back a little and make it clear that this was not the first option of the Trump administration, that Trump was not immediately looking at going directly into a confrontation with China. And I suppose Mattis, to be fair, despite being a general and being the head of the Pentagon, so far he's been the most restrained about the use of military force and military power in the region. So again, I think it's an attempt to reassure the allies who are looking at Trump and not being certain as to whether or not this man has a real strategic idea of what he wants to do in this region.
Sure. Stay with us, Pramit, because there's another interesting thing that happened this week as far as Trump is concerned, where a refugee deal between the US and Australia is in doubt after reports of a bitter phone call between US President Donald Trump and Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull emerged on Thursday. In a phone call last week, Trump had called the deal to resettle asylum seekers in US as dumb. Meanwhile, as voice of protest grows over the travel ban, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for the removal of the ban.
With protests growing across the world over the travel ban order passed by US President Donald Trump, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for revoking the ban. Guterres said the ban imposed on refugees and immigrants from 7 countries should be removed at the earliest.
This is not the way to best protect the US or any other country in relation to the serious concerns that exist about possibilities of terrorist infiltration, but I don't think this is the effective way to do so. And I think that these measures should be removed sooner rather than later. That was the appeal I made.
Since the passing of the executive order, protests have been continuously held across several US states. Thousands of New Yorkers took to the streets on Wednesday to protest the ban.
We have to resist. We have to protect the Constitution. But we also have to show that the contributions of immigrants, the contributions of the Muslim community is essential to the survival of the United States of America.
Meanwhile, reports of a discord between Trump and Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull over a refugee settlement deal have emerged. A Washington Post report said Trump abruptly cut short a fiery conversation with Turnbull last week after criticizing the agreement to resettle people kept in Pacific camps.
I'm not going to I'm not going to comment on a conversation between myself and the President of the United States, other than what we have said publicly, and you can surely understand the reasons for that.
Since taking office on January 20th, Trump has passed several executive orders, the most controversial of which is the travel ban on refugees from all over the world from entering the United States for 120 days and a 90-day ban on the entry of nationals from 7 Islamic nations. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, I'm going to go back to my guest at this point in time to get a reaction on this as well. I mean, this was another interesting bit of information that was,
Yes.
reported across the world, the phone call between Donald Trump and Australia. Do you believe that the relationship between the two countries has been soured now as a result of that?
Well, what it has signaled from the Trump side is that, and that seems to be, I think, relatively clear, that Trump doesn't actually care that much about whether the historical relationship between your country and the United States. The fact that Australia, polls have shown that Republicans rate Australia as the #1 most faithful ally of the United States. It's the only country among even the Western allies who has actually joined America in every single war since World War I, including Vietnam, in which no other Western country sent troops to support the United States. But Trump has come in and he said, I have these economic priorities on immigration, on manufacturing and making it in the United States. And on these issues, I'm not compromising with anybody, and I don't care who you or what you are, right? That's the signal message that has been, I think, relatively clear in the first 100 days or the first few months of the Trump administration. And so this was actually a confirmation of this. Here he talks with the Australian Prime Minister, who, as I've said, represents a country that's remarkably close to the United States, rated in some cases higher than even Britain and Israel as an ally of America. And he gets angry over a refugee deal because most of these refugees are Iranians. And Trump, of course, has just passed a travel ban on Iranians going to get into the United States. So probably logically, at least from Trump's point of view, he would also therefore oppose a refugee agreement passed by his previous president to allow about over 1,000 refugees back into the United States, of whom the bulk are Iranian. So what's striking for me is, I think, that the lesson that world leaders should get from this is don't assume anything with Trump. Just because you have a historical relationship with America, this is a man who is literally not from the mainstream of either of the major parties of America. And he doesn't necessarily accept that the order, the international order that America itself created, is something that he will respect.
Sure.
And I think the mistake that Turnbull made in here was to raise this issue in the first phone call. He should have actually had, if I had done it, I would have said, this man actually doesn't care about the larger picture. And if I press this button, just when he's in the middle of a huge controversy in America over the visa ban, then obviously he's going to focus on this.
Indeed.
And I think if you look at Prime Minister Modi's conversations and all the Indian interactions, while the Indian side is almost certainly nervous or unhappy with the H-1B policy that Trump seems to be advocating, or at least his Attorney General is, so issues in climate change, Iran nuclear deal, all of these, India has a problem with the Trump administration's seeming position. We'll see how it evolves. India has not raised them.
Indeed.
India has basically said, we'll wait until the administration settles down. In the private conversation between Modi and Trump, as far as we know, none of these are raised. And so Trump was basically very happy. He said, India is my true friend. I like Modi. He's a good guy. And I think Modi's doing the right thing. Establish the personal relationship. Allow this administration, which is still very chaotic, of the 700 executive appointments that are needed, minimum are needed, Trump has only appointed 40 people so far.
Sure.
Which means that he's got almost nobody in place.
Indeed, so and we'll take up the sticky issues later on.
Exactly.
Indeed, all right. We'll have to leave it at that. Pramit Chaudhuri, thanks so much for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Well, on that note, it's time for a short break now, but still to come, half a dozen people were killed in a mosque in Canada's Quebec City. Suspect, a French-Canadian student charged with multiple murders. That and much more on the other side. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha Television. The Canadian police have charged a French-Canadian student over the fatal shooting of 6 Muslim worshippers at a mosque in Quebec. Alexander Bissonnette faces 6 counts of first-degree murder and 5 of attempted murder. The 27-year-old was arrested over last weekend's attack during evening prayers at the Quebec Islamic Cultural Centre. Vigils have been held across Canada to commemorate those killed and injured. More than 50 people were at the mosque when the shooting erupted just before 8 p.m. on January 29th.
Residents in the Canadian city of Quebec were left in shock on Sunday night when a deadly attack on a mosque left 6 people dead and wounded several others. The incident occurred at the Quebec Islamic Cultural Centre, where gunmen fired at dozens of people who had gathered for evening prayers.
This was a group of innocents targeted for practicing their faith. Make no mistake, this was a terrorist attack. It was an attack on our most intrinsic and cherished values as Canadians, values of openness, diversity, and freedom of religion.
Canadian political leaders stood in the House of Commons on Sunday, united first in words, then silence, to denounce violence and appeal for unity in the wake of the mosque massacre. As the Canadian flag on the Peace Star flew at half-mast, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau condemned the despicable act of terror.
To the more than 1 million Canadians who profess the Muslim faith, I want to say directly, we are with you. 36 million hearts are breaking with yours. And know that we value you. You enrich our shared country in immeasurable ways. It is your home. Last night's horrible crime against the Muslim community was an act of terror committed against Canada and against all Canadians. We will grieve with you, we will defend you, we will love you, and we will stand with you.
Residents of Quebec expressed shock at the incident and hoped that the city stands united in this dark hour.
You know, people are going to be a little bit more on edge, but I'm hoping that everybody just comes together on this and you know, shows again their support for the community, because I mean that's what we need at this point in time, is to show them that we accept them, and you know, they integrate very well with the society. So again, I'm very shocked that such an incident has taken place with our fellow citizens.
Stressful because I'm not from here, and I just can't imagine awful things like that happening in here, where I imagine most of the people are respectful about that. Seeing and hearing about that is horrifying.
Mass shootings are rare in Canada, which has stricter gun laws than the United States. The news of the shooting sent shockwaves through mosques and community centers across the country. The shooting occurred a day after Trudeau said Canada would welcome refugees after US President Donald Trump suspended the US refugee program and temporarily barred citizens from 7 Muslim-majority nations from entering the country. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, US President Donald Trump sacked Acting Attorney General Sally Yates for questioning his executive order on the immigration ban. The White House accused Yates of betraying the Department of Justice. Yates had asked the department not to defend Trump's order that denies entry to all refugees as well as citizens of 7 Muslim-majority nations.
US President Donald Trump fired acting US Attorney General Sally Yates after she refused to enforce his immigration ban orders. Yates was appointed by Barack Obama. She was sacked hours after she told the Justice Department not to enforce the presidential order, saying she wasn't convinced that it was lawful. A White House statement said Yates betrayed the department. U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, Dana Pente, replaced Yates as acting Attorney General. The White House defended the order.
His view, in general, is not to wait to get ahead of the curve. There wasn't a specific threat. He was saying we have to do this Saturday, Sunday will be. But the point that I'm trying to make is that we don't know when that hour comes. We don't know when that individual crosses into our border to do us harm. And so the idea of waiting when you don't know, could it be that night? Could it be the next day? Could it be the next week? And the president's view is, I'm not going to wait. I'm going to make sure that we protect the homeland and its people as soon as possible with every measure that I can.
Political and legal pressure continued to grow over the travel ban. Washington became the first state to challenge Trump's executive order legally, while Democrats called for the end to the ban.
We are a country based on the rule of law. And in a courtroom, it is not the loudest voice that prevails. It's the Constitution. That's why we're a nation of laws. At the end of the day, either you are abiding by the Constitution or you are not. And in our view, the president is not adhering to the Constitution when it comes to his executive action.
What Trump has done is give ammunition to the jihadists all over the world who have told their people that we in the United States hate them. We do not hate the Muslim people, and we want them to know that.
Former President Barack Obama also sided with protesters, saying he fundamentally disagreed with the notion of discriminating against individuals because of their faith or religion. Huge protests were held across several US states and around the globe. Hundreds of Google employees gathered outside its Mountain View headquarters to protest against the ban. Protests were also held in Washington and Ohio, where protesters clashed with the police. London and Tokyo also witnessed protests over the ban order.
You know, green card holders and visa, like citizens of our country, are being stopped. And, you know, it's like coming home and having the police, you know, like raid your house and be like, you know, like, oh, well, you can't go home. Like, in terms of like trying to relate it to, it's impossible. Like, you feel like a second-rate citizen. You don't feel like, you know, it's your home. You know, like some of my friends may be Catholic or Christian or whatever it may be. It's like, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, what you believe. It's who you are. Everyone wants the same thing. We love our families and our neighbors, and we just want to be happy and secure in life.
Trump's ban on nationals from 7 Muslim-majority countries has sparked street protests in US and abroad. The ban bars citizens from Iraq, Syria, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan and Yemen. President Trump argued that his action will protect America from attacks. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, much else has unfolded around the world this week. Here's a roundup of the other international news in Globe Watch.
Pakistan has placed Jamaat-ud-Dawa chief Hafiz Saeed's name on the exit control list. This comes after Mumbai terror attack mastermind and his 4 aides were put under house arrest. India, meanwhile, continues to remain cautious about the development, with MEA maintaining that all concrete evidence against Saeed has been handed over to Pakistan. The UK Parliament Wednesday voted to allow government to begin Brexit talks. Members of House of Commons voted 498 to 114 to advance the bill that will give Prime Minister Theresa May the authority to invoke Article 15 of the Lisbon Treaty, the formal process of leaving the European Union. The bill now faces further scrutiny in Commons and House of Lords before it can become law. Uber Technologies Chief Executive Officer Travis Kalanick quit President Donald Trump's business advisory group on Thursday. The CEO was under mounting pressure from activists opposing the administration's migration policies. Critics include Uber drivers, many of whom are immigrants themselves. Tens of thousands of Romanians protested in Bucharest and other main cities. The rally comes in the wake of government's plans to decriminalize certain offences and pardon convicts through emergency decrees that could hurt anti-graft drive. Police said about 50,000 people took part in rally in Bucharest, making it the biggest demonstration in the recent wave of protests. A French soldier shot and wounded a man armed with a knife after he tried to enter Louvre Museum in Paris. The state police believe he wanted to carry out a terrorist attack. The attacker was alive but seriously wounded, the head of Paris police said.
Well, let's now shift focus and bring you up to speed with all the sports news you might have missed in sports action. Former England and Chelsea midfield star Frank Lampard retired on Thursday, aged 38, calling time on a playing career that will be remembered as one of the Premier League's finest. Lampard did not reveal what he plans to do next, but said he was grateful to the Football Association for the opportunity to do his coaching badges, suggesting he may go into management. Lampard left New York City FC in the autumn and also played for West Ham United and Manchester City in the Premier League. But it was at Stamford Bridge where he really made his name as a prolific midfielder. Luis Suarez and Lionel Messi scored stunning goals to edge Barcelona towards a fourth consecutive Kings Cup final with a 2-1 win at Atletico Madrid on Wednesday, although the holders were lucky to survive a late onslaught from the hosts. Suarez opened the scoring with a breathtaking individual goal in the 7th minute, and Messi smashed in off the post from outside the area in the 33rd. Atletico vastly improved in the second half, and Antoine Griezmann's header reduced the deficit in the 59th minute. Olympic and Paralympic medals for the Tokyo 2020 Games will be made from recycled mobile phones. The Japanese public will be asked to donate old phones and small appliances to gather 2 tons of gold, silver and bronze for the 5,000 medals. The project hopes to promote sustainability and reduce costs. Collection boxes will be placed in local offices and telecom stores from April and will remain there until the metal required has been collected. Members of Japan's Olympic Organizing Committee tabled the idea to the government officials and companies in 2016. Globe-trotting West Indian all-rounder Andre Russell has been banned from all cricket for a year over a doping code violation. The 28-year-old did not file his whereabouts on 3 occasions in 2015 as required, which constitutes a failed drugs test under World Anti-Doping Agency guidelines. His punishment was handed down by the Jamaican Anti-Doping Commission on Tuesday. Under WADA's whereabouts rules, elite athletes must supply details of where they will be for 1 hour each day to facilitate drug tests. Jamaican sprint great Usain Bolt has no plans to extend his career beyond this year's World Championships in London and has ruled out a return to Australia for the 2018 Commonwealth Games. The 30-year-old also said he is resigned to the fact that he's lost one of his 9 Olympic gold medals, but isn't holding any grudges against drug-tainted Jamaican relay teammate Nesta Carter. Carter has said he will appeal after reanalysis of his sample from the 2008 Beijing Games using more advanced scientific methods returned a positive test to the prohibited stimulant methyl hexanamine. And finally, some 83 people decided to take on freezing temperatures and throw themselves into Lake Ledro in the north of Italy, all for a bit of fun. People from all over northern Italy, aged 8 to 71, took part in the challenge, which involved diving into the lake and swimming 20 meters to a snow-covered pontoon before returning to shore. I'm going to leave you with these visuals from Italy. See you again next time.